Welcome back to Helper Dad. Today, we're diving into how to download RustDesk on your laptop. RustDesk is a fantastic remote desktop application that gives you the power to access and control computers remotely. This opens up a world of possibilities, from troubleshooting a family member's computer from afar to accessing your work files while you're on the go. In this guide, we'll walk you through all the steps involved in downloading and installing RustDesk, making the process simple and straightforward, so you can start using it in no time. Before we get started with the download, it's important to ensure your system meets the necessary requirements. RustDesk is quite versatile, running on Windows 7 through 11, macOS 10.11 or later, and various Linux distributions that have GTK 3.14 or newer. Regarding architecture, it supports x86 and x64 processors on Windows and Linux, ARM processors across Windows, Linux, and macOS, and even Apple Silicon on macOS. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, you'll need a stable internet connection to download the program and, of course, for reliable remote access functionality once it's installed. Right, let's move on to downloading RustDesk itself. First, you'll want to navigate to the official RustDesk website at rustdesk.com. Once you're there, look for a Download or Get RustDesk section on the page. From there, it's important to select the appropriate version of RustDesk that matches your operating system, whether it's Windows, macOS, or Linux. Make sure you also choose the correct architecture for your system, which could be 32-bit, 64-bit, ARM, or even Apple Silicon, depending on your device. After you've selected the right version, just click the download link. The file you download will usually be an executable file with a .exe extension for Windows, a .dmg file for macOS, or a .deb.rpm or .tar.gz archive for Linux systems. Let's move on to installing RustDesk on Windows. First, locate the downloaded file, which should be named something like RustDesk version.exe in your Downloads folder. Once you've found it, double-click the .exe file to start the installation process. You may encounter a user account control prompt asking for permission to allow the installer to make changes to your device. If so, grant the necessary permission. Next, you'll proceed through the installation options, which typically involve accepting the license agreement, choosing an installation location, although the default location is usually recommended, and deciding whether or not to create a desktop shortcut for easy access. Finally, click Install to begin the installation, and once it's complete, simply click Finish. Right, let's move on to installing RustDesk on macOS. First, you'll need to locate the downloaded file, which should be a .dmg file with a name like rustdesk-star.dmg sitting pretty in your Downloads folder. Once you've found it, simply double-click the .dmg file to mount the disk image. Now, drag the RustDesk application icon from the mounted image over to your Applications folder to install it. To launch RustDesk, navigate to your Applications folder and give the RustDesk icon a double-click. macOS might throw up a security prompt asking for permission to open the application. Just go ahead and grant it that permission. Finally, and this is important, RustDesk needs accessibility permissions to function properly, particularly for remote control. Follow the prompts that appear, guiding you to grant these permissions in System Preferences under Security and Privacy, then in the Accessibility section. Let's move on to installing RustDesk on Linux. It's important to remember that installation methods can vary depending on your specific Linux distribution, such as Debian, Ubuntu, Fedora, or CentOS. If you're using Debian or Ubuntu and have a .deb file, you'll want to open a terminal, navigate to the directory containing that file, and then run the command sudo apt install, /rustdesk-star.deb. For Fedora or CentOS users with a .rpm file, open a terminal, navigate to the appropriate directory, and then use the command sudo dnf install /rustdesk-star.rpm for Fedora or sudo yum install /rustdesk-star.rpm for CentOS. If you have a generic Linux distribution and a .tar.gz file, extract the archive using tar.xz rustdesk-star.tar.gz, navigate to the extracted directory, and run the executable RustDesk, making sure it's executable with chmod plus x RustDesk if needed. Finally, regardless of your distribution, ensure that GTK 3.14 or later is installed, using your distribution's package manager if you need to install it. That you have RustDesk installed, let's launch and configure it. On Windows, you'll typically find a desktop shortcut or locate it in the Start menu. If you're on macOS, head to the Applications folder. And for Linux users, depending on how you installed it, you'll either find it in the Application menu or you can launch it directly from the terminal. Once you've located it, simply double-click the application icon to launch RustDesk. Upon opening, you'll see the main interface, which displays your unique ID and a temporary password. This ID and password are what you'll share with others to allow them to connect to your device, and you'll use theirs to connect to theirs. Optionally, you can dive into the settings to configure various aspects such as security, network, and display preferences. A particularly useful setting is the option to set a permanent password, which is essential for unattended access to your computer. Thanks for watching. See you next time on Help or Dad. RustDesk is now successfully installed and ready to use on your laptop, opening up a world of remote access possibilities. You can now connect to other remote devices or grant access to your laptop for others to connect. We encourage you to explore the RustDesk settings to fine-tune the software for optimal performance and to ensure your security preferences are properly configured. Good luck with your remote connections.